you, Brad. Up next is Ryan Trost. Ryan is the manager of General Dynamics Security Operations Center, SOC. He's a published author, has done some work around visualization of intrusion detection systems, right? And was on the very first Mid-Atlantic Collegiate Cyber Defense Competition Red Team, 2006. I remember Ryan, he rolled in with a rack-mounted humongous server and monitor, and so welcome back, Ryan.
Thank you. Let's see, what's the... Okay. Gotcha. Is this on? Okay. Okay. Yes.
Okay. Plug your computer in there.
Oh,
Because
sorry.
your PowerPoint's we just saved it. So it's being used for producing.
Oh, gotcha.
Which one?
Gotcha.
Sorry about that.
That's cool.
Do you have an answer for yours?
No.
For your,
Nah, it's okay.
because you'll automatically sync.
Yeah, nah, that's okay.
There you go. There you go. Are you gonna use this?
No, I'll probably stay here, but I'll do it old school.
Great. Sorry.
No worries. So it'll take me a couple minutes thanks to hard drive encryption. Okay, so this is the unclassed version of my presentation, which thanks to General Dynamics has been sanitized slightly. The underbelly of healthcare acquisitions. So I'm going to take a little bit of a different stance. The underlying premise is still, it's more acquisitions than it is healthcare. So those will be kind of universal no matter what discipline or field you kind of work within. So the agenda I'm going to try to cover, introductions, mergers and acquisitions, the landscape, it's pretty impressive. I'm going to touch upon the process. I'm not heavily ingrained in the process, but I'll try to introduce some of the woes. Why is the M&A such a rich target, the announcement, and then Q&A. So as Casey alluded to, my name is Ryan Trost. I developed a geospatial intrusion detection model back in my master's degree at GW. I'm the author of Practical Intrusion Analysis, which was published back in 2009. Currently, I'm the manager of the General Dynamics Security Operations Center. We focus on primarily nation-state targeting and counterintelligence. In a previous life, I was the Director of Security and Privacy Officer for a medium-sized healthcare company down in Virginia. I'm an ex-adjunct faculty member. I used to teach ethical hacking, IDS firewalls, network security visualization. Once I had both my daughters, the adjunct and the free time just plummeted. Let's see, I participated in the infamous CCDC on the red teaming squad. I don't know if Casey will want to allude to much more than that. Let's see, the conferences that I've spoken at are DEF CON, SANS, HIPAA, and a couple others. Those are probably the most notable. Okay, so mergers and acquisitions. A lot of people don't realize what a big business mergers and acquisitions are. According to Ernst & Young Global Technology, 759 deals in Q3 alone of last year shows an 8% uptick year over year, but a 2% decrease in Q2. The aggregate announced deal value was $56 billion for that one quarter. So it's a lot of money. I'm not going to go into too much of the statistics, but you can kind of see in the visualization graph, the healthcare IT is somewhat in the upper right hand, right next to cloud and SaaS. The healthcare IT deal volume continues to increase. It is definitely a growing topic, industry, et cetera. So the healthcare IT M&A process. So from last year, some of the bigger M&A deals, Blackstone Group, $2.2 million deal. I don't have any visibility into any of that stuff, so that's outside. I have somewhat visibility to the second bullet point. So the second largest Q3 deal was a roughly $900 million deal that my company purchased Vangent. As the USG defense spending decreases, a lot of the CDCs, clear defense contractors, are looking for other industries and fields to really jump into. Healthcare is obviously a pretty big target. So you'll see a lot of the CDCs really diving into it. GD, obviously, Lockheed, Northrop. A lot of them are starting to really go in the direction of healthcare because it is growing so expensive, so quickly. So the acquisition process, again, this is by no means I'm not a SME in this by any stretch of the imagination, but you enter into negotiations. A lot of foo happens with the actual negotiations. So a lot of times both companies will pick a made-up name, and they'll basically just start negotiations back and forth. Usually there's a leak, so there's an intent to purchase. This can be done for any number of reasons. Well, whether it's an employee talks to a reporter, I know something you don't know type deal, and it gets visibility. Is it done for a shareholder, financial movements between either company, potentially, and then the deal closes. But what I really want to focus in on is the intent to purchase versus when the deal actually closes. And this is specifically why the M&A process is such a rich target. A lot of times, Company A, I'll focus more so on the acquisition. So Company A buys Company B. Company A is typically a lot larger, a lot bigger. They're going to have more mature strategic positions, more mature skill sets, security practices, policies, etc. Company B is probably the little guy or the medium-sized company that's looking to basically be purchased. So back when I was the student's age and I was diving into the three-letter agencies and so forth, everybody kind of knew if you wanted to attack the US government, you never attacked directly at the front door. You always go through other means. So contractors, subcontractors, any type of relation where that direct tie just wasn't as strong as that front door. Government's got a lot of money that they spend towards trying to defend it. Up in the air how well they actually do at it, but it's much easier to attack the smaller guy than it is the bigger guy. That holds true in this conversation as well. The smaller companies, again, don't historically have a lot of the mature processes down. A lot of times they don't have whether it's the resources, whether it's the intel, the external intel that they're getting, to really defend against a lot of the nation-state players. So for my company specifically, so we're part of the DIB, Defense Industrial Base, healthcare, crossing planes, if you will, with the Vangent purchase. Let's see, and the M&A also, there's a lot of confusion. The IT integration is usually an absolute nightmare. Company A does it completely different than Company B. How do you get them to play nice? Do you completely whack Company B over the head and say you're changing everything, or do we try to come together in a round table and what's the best process? Maybe we change a little here, maybe we change a little bit there, and we come together in that sense. The business relationship also is very, very easily tested. And then the uneasy feel of an acquisition. Typically, Company A purchases Company B. Company B's, a lot of the leaders are ultimately going to look elsewhere, or they're only going to be around for a short time period. So it creates a very uneasy feeling. Usually Company A, first thing they have to do is cut costs. Company B is worth X number of dollars. They ultimately have to subtract whatever margin off the bottom line. So that's immediately what they look to do is cut costs. Let's see, in the phase of connecting who needs to talk to who, and I'll dive into that momentarily. Okay, so the announcement. The intent to purchase. So the top example I'm a little bit more intimate with because it's my company. It was on August 17th, the intent to buy. So it made press. The actual deal didn't close until October 1st. So there's a lot of lead time, there's a lot of latency between that initial intent to buy and the actual deal goes through. The bottom one is the Blackstone deal. It caught wind in the media July 27th, and it didn't actually close until November 2nd. Now again, through my company, part of the DIB, we have a lot of nation-state targeting. So we're targeted almost on a daily basis by very sophisticated attackers, in which case Vangent didn't have a very good grasp on a lot of that stuff. Historically, that's usually not who APT targets. They target more of the intellectual property of the DIB, the companies that are making very expensive stuff for the military and the government as well. So what this does is this ultimately gives ABT a fair amount of lead time to start targeting Company B to get their foothold. That's ultimately, advanced persistent threat. The persistence is the key. So between August, mid-August, and October, they could ultimately just target Company B in this case until they got a foothold in. And the same is true with the Blackstone, and again, any merger and acquisition deal that has visibility to nation states. So the aftermath of the announcement, which I've alluded to, is ultimately trying to, ABT or any type of attacker, trying to get a foothold into that Company B in order to make lateral movements into Company A once the deal is complete after post integration, and so forth. So a lot of times, the footholds are pretty, again, I can't say either way, obviously, but it's not very difficult for advanced persistent threat to target a smaller, significantly smaller company and not get in. So the actions of intent. So a lot of times they want lateral movements. They want access to company A. Company A is going to have a lot more intellectual property. It's going to be a lot richer of value. How do they do that? Any number of ways. What I've seen historically in talking in my group within the DIB, sometimes they just, patience. They'll gain that foothold and they'll just wait until after the merger or the acquisition is completely finalized. Could take months, could take probably not years, but many, many weeks. APT will just sit there. As soon as they gain that foothold, they're good. They hand it over to the second team. Insert malcode into an object and wait for the owner to legitimately distribute that to company A. So again, they gain a foothold into company B. They ultimately find their grasp, whether it's an executive, whether it's HR, whether it's recruiting, whether it's an engineer, whether it's IT staff. They ultimately find the computer, the host that they want to target. They'll literally search their computer for a PDF, a document, an Excel, anything that they can basically inject their malcode and ultimately just let it sit there. They'll extract themselves, they'll wait, and wait for the owner of that workstation to actually legitimately send that to somebody at company A or out in order to gain that foothold. Or man in the mailbox. That's probably one of the most popular of attacks these days, where they will actually compromise a user and then use that user's exchange credentials or that inbox to send more malcode to, again, company A or any of the email recipients within the GAL. So we see that very often, or the attempt of, whether it's through spoof or whether it's through an actual compromise of a lower company. Again, we see that absolutely all the time. It's one of the most dangerous things because a lot of times the adversary will actually use an email thread that's already been between the two parties. So it won't be a brand new, I don't know who this person is, I don't have any relationship with this person. It's kind of a cold email. It's the opposite of that. It's between the person that they've compromised and somebody that they already know at another company, and it'll usually be, again, an email thread that they've already transferred, they've already discussed back and forth. So it's a reply or it's a forward. It's usually not a cold. So that's the worst case, ultimately, scenario with the merger and acquisition to gain that foothold is, again, usually leveraging the acquisition the acquisition process in order to gain that foothold into, again, company A is the ultimate target. Company B is just an innocent bystander that's being acquired. So, okay, so the war stories. So again, that Vangent acquisition was very interesting for my team. So again, we focus on purely nation state targeting of GD. What we saw when we acquired Vangent, we started to get their feeds in. A lot of times, all we want is HTTP, SMTP. Those are obviously the most popular. But once we really got to see a couple of their logs, we realized that once that initial announcement was made on August 2017, I believe it was, we actually saw some of the intrusion sets that we track targeting an acquisition that they acquired several months ahead. So APT had completely done their research. They're very well sponsored. They know usually more than the company itself knows as far as what's going on. So they actually started targeting, once that announcement was made, they started targeting a company C who was bought by company B, who was then being bought by company A. So 2 degrees of separation in order to make that lateral movement into company A. It's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. But again, extremely difficult to defend against because of that initial foothold and it being a man in the mailbox or something along those lines. Again, whether it's a legitimate document that's eventually being passed, whether they just keep their foothold in until the actual IT integration is passed, it's extremely difficult to defend against. And it definitely, that's what keeps me up at night, the mergers and acquisitions. So I have 3 big woes as I'm running kind of the security posture. Mergers and acquisitions, probably 3. Spearfish is probably 2. And a lot of times the mobile devices, nightmare, absolute nightmare. And a lot of this stuff we're starting to really wrap our arms around from a DIB standpoint, from a CDC standpoint, and so forth. So at that point, again, please feel free to contact me. I do this day in and day out. I'm usually up 24 hours a day. I don't really sleep all that often. Whether it's the kids screaming or this. But any questions or whatnot? Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you.